Battle of the Imjin River, Filipino Outposts under siege. What if you were outnumbered 10 to 1? A forgotten battle, a twilight struggle on a river of blood. This is the untold story of a small band of Filipino soldiers, abandoned and surrounded, who stared into the face of an entire army and refused to blink. Their courage that night would change the course of a war. Chapter 1: The Forgotten Front. In the grand sweeping story of the Korean War, with its massive armies and famous generals, some stories get lost. They fall through the cracks of history, buried under the snow and silence of forgotten battlefields. This is one of those stories. They were called PEFTOK, the Philippine Expeditionary Force to Korea. Volunteers, many of them teenagers, who traveled thousands of miles to fight in a war that wasn't their own, for a country they'd never seen. They were fighting for freedom, for democracy, and for a world free from tyranny. Our story takes us to the spring of 1951, to a lonely stretch of the front line along the Imjin River. Here, a small group from the 10th Battalion Combat Team held a vital outpost. Among them was Private Santos, barely 18, his breath turning to frost in the biting Korean air. He clutched his rifle, thinking of the warm sun of his village, a world away from this frozen wasteland. Watching over him was Sergeant Cruz, a veteran, a man who had seen the worst of war before and carried its weight in the lines on his face. He knew this quiet was unnatural. For days, the enemy on the other side of the river had been silent, too silent. It was a silence that felt heavy, like a coiled snake ready to strike. As twilight bled across the sky, turning the snow a deep, ominous purple, a single strange sound echoed from across the river. A faint whistle. Then another. It wasn't a bird. It wasn't the wind. It was a signal. The serpent was about to awaken. These brave Filipinos were about to face an entire army, outnumbered, outgunned, and with no help in sight. Their story is a testament to the incredible strength of the human spirit. If you believe in honoring forgotten heroes, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and comment Mabuhay below to show you respect. You won't want to miss what happens next. Chapter 2: The Red Dragon Awakens. For a heartbeat, the world was frozen in that ghostly light. And in that heartbeat, Private Santos saw the impossible. It wasn't an attack. It was a flood. The entire opposite bank, the frozen river, the snow-covered fields, they were moving. A living, breathing tsunami of soldiers, their padded winter uniforms making them look like a single monstrous entity. This was the human wave attack, a brutal tactic of the Chinese People's Volunteer Army. They sent wave after wave of soldiers, believing that the sheer overwhelming number of men was a weapon in itself. They believed you couldn't possibly kill them all before they overran you. "Santos, snap out of it! Fire!" Sergeant Cruz's voice cut through the fog of fear. That was all it took. Training kicked in. Santos raised his M1 rifle, the cold steel, a familiar comfort in a world gone mad. He aimed, fired, and worked the bolt. Fired again. Around him, the entire outpost roared to life. Machine guns chattered, their tracer rounds stitching fiery lines into the darkness. But for every enemy soldier that fell, 3 more seemed to take his place. They climbed over their own fallen comrades, a relentless, unstoppable tide of gray. The Filipinos were fighting with everything they had, a small island of defiance against an ocean of death. Their bravery was incredible, but bravery alone can't stop a tidal wave. The radio inside the command bunker crackled with static and panicked voices from other outposts along the river. The news was bad. Everyone was being hit at once. They weren't just being attacked, they were being cut off. The enemy wasn't just trying to take their hill,
They were swallowing the entire front line whole. Help wasn't coming. They were completely and utterly alone. Chapter 3: A River of Fire. The radio confirmed their worst fears. The line had broken. To their left, to their right, other UN positions were being swallowed by the darkness. The Imjin River behind them was no longer a line of defense. It was a cage door, slammed shut. The handful of Filipinos on this lonely hill were now an island, completely surrounded by an enemy that numbered in tens of thousands. The Red Dragon had awakened, and it was breathing fire. The fighting was no longer at a distance. It was face to face, hand to hand, a desperate, brutal struggle in the mud and the dark. It was a whirlwind of frantic action, the flash of bayonets, the desperate shouts of men fighting for every inch of ground. Private Santos saw a grenade land near his friend, who was already wounded and couldn't move. Time seemed to slow down. Fear screamed at him to run, to hide. But something else, something stronger, took over. He didn't think, he just acted. In that moment, the scared boy that left his village was gone, replaced by a soldier. All around him, similar acts of incredible bravery were playing out. These men weren't just soldiers, they were lions, cornered and protecting their pride. They refused to die quietly. The courage they were showing is almost unbelievable, a forgotten chapter of heroism that deserves to be remembered. If you're finding this story as incredible as I am, take a second to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because you need to see how this impossible fight ends. Cruz read the message. His eyes widened slightly. It wasn't the order he expected. It wasn't fight to the last man. It wasn't surrender. It was something far crazier, an order born of pure, undiluted courage. They were being ordered to do the unthinkable. They were to gather the wounded, fix their bayonets, and charge forward. They were going to try and break out by attacking the very heart of the army that had them surrounded. It was a suicide mission, but it was their only chance.
Chapter 4: The Last Stand. A suicide mission. That's what it was. Every man in that trench understood it. To charge out of their fortified position and into the open, directly at the heart of an army that outnumbered them more than 10 to 1, was madness. For a moment, doubt flickered in their eyes. They were exhausted, walking wounded, with barely any bullets left. But then they looked at each other. They saw the faces of their brothers, caked in mud and blood. They had fought together, bled together. If they were going to die, they would die together, not cowering in a ditch, but on their feet, fighting. "Look around you," Sergeant Cruz said, his voice cracking with emotion and exhaustion. "We are all that's left. There is no retreat. There is no surrender. There is only the man beside you. We fight for them. We fight for home. Now, fix bayonets." With a roar that seemed to come from the very soul of their nation, they surged up and over the trench wall, a tiny band of lions charging into a forest of wolves. The sheer audacity of the attack shocked the enemy. They were expecting a final desperate defense, not a ferocious head-on assault. The Filipinos crashed into the first line of Chinese soldiers, the momentum of their desperate courage carrying them through. They were a whirlwind of steel and fury, fighting with the strength they didn't know they possessed. For a few frantic, unbelievable minutes, it seemed to be working. They had punched a hole. But it was an illusion. The hole they had created was closing fast. The ocean was flowing back in. They were now fighting in the open, completely exposed, their brief, heroic charge about to be swallowed whole. The end had finally come. Chapter 5: Echoes of the Imjen. They were overwhelmed, a tiny island of defiance about to be washed away forever. But then came the sound, a low, guttural roar that grew louder and louder. It was the sound of hope from a direction they never expected. Out of the pre-dawn darkness, two giant, monstrous shapes appeared, their single headlights cutting through the chaos like the eyes of avenging angels. Two American M4 Sherman tanks, guns blazing, crashed through the Chinese lines. They are a terrifying, unstoppable force of steel and fire. The enemy soldiers, who had no heavy anti-tank weapons, break and scatter in panic. An American armored column had seen the hopeless fight from a distance and had charged in without orders, breaking through miles of enemy territory to save the surrounded Filipinos. The tide of the battle didn't just turn, it shattered. The hunters had become the hunted. The human wave, so terrifying just moments before, broke apart and retreated into the darkness from which it came. As the sun rose, it revealed the terrible cost of their courage, but they had held. A single small unit of Filipino soldiers had stood against an entire division and had refused to break. Their impossible stand wasn't just a matter of survival. By holding their ground for those crucial hours, they had disrupted the timing of the entire massive Chinese spring offensive. They bought precious, vital time for the main UN battle line to prepare and hold. Their sacrifice had saved countless lives. The Battle of the Imjin River is a story that was almost lost to history. It's the story of ordinary young men who, on a long and terrifying night, found something extraordinary within themselves. They were outnumbered, but they were never outmatched in spirit. Their heroism echoes from that frozen riverbank, a quiet testament to the enduring power of courage. It is our duty to keep these echoes alive, to remember the names of the forgotten heroes. If this story moved you, please honor these soldiers by sharing this video. Like, subscribe, and comment below to let us know what other lost stories of heroism you think we should tell. Thank you for watching, and thank you for helping us remember. Thank you so much also for subscribing, liking, and commenting to our video. God bless us all.